The last session of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee on Plastic Pollution is underway over in Korea's southern port city of Busan. And all eyes are on whether the talks will lead to a tangible action plan to tackle the alarming repercussions of plastic waste on people and their nature. We have details on Press Perspective today. Hello and welcome to Press Perspective for this Tuesday, November 26th here in Capital Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. Korea is playing host to a number of global gatherings this week aimed at addressing plastic pollution and advancing sustainable energy solutions. For more on this, I have Celio Fioretti, correspondent for the French daily Croix, over in Busan. Celio, welcome back to the program.
Glad to be connected.
I also have Chloe Borgnon, a correspondent for French broadcaster France 24 here in the studio. Chloe, it's good to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
First, Celia, we'll start with you. Let's begin with some background information about the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee on Plastic Pollution. What is it? When did it start? Who are the participants? And why is this latest session so important?
Well, it all started 2 years ago in March 2022 in Uruguay. That was the first meeting of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee, the INC, about plastic. The United Nations convened of a need for a treaty negotiation that will be able to solve the issue of plastic. The goal is to make a legally binding treaty that will therefore commit countries to respect their engagement or face a sanction. At the beginning, the idea was mostly focused on microplastic, but with every meeting, the scope grew larger and larger to establish a treaty that can cover all about plastic, from production to waste management. In its current form, the treaty is tackling the issue of waste management, plastic production, but also the protection of marine environments, because most of the plastic waste end up in the water and on our shores. Also, it's looking at ways to implement and finance these changes to make our economies more sustainable. This week in Busan, it's the 5th time the INC is holding its meeting. It's supposed to be the last one. Starting from yesterday, 175 participating countries are hosting negotiations to agree on a treaty that is supposed to be signed on December 1st, if everything goes smoothly.
Right, and before we delve further into the talks that are currently taking place over in Busan, Chloe, what has been shared about the severity of plastic pollution in recent times?
So recently, what we've seen in the recent years, let's say for the different studies, first thing is that production of plastic has doubled since 2000. So that's number from the OCDE, and it's expected to triple by 2060. So that's about production, not pollution itself. But it's important to see that less than 10% of plastic is currently recycled. So that means that about 20 million tons are leaking into the environment. And just as Celio explained, they are going into the sea mostly, but it's just plastic is getting everywhere. And I found a study in April 2024 that's shown that there is a 1-to-1 ratio between production and pollution. So when you produce plastic and you raise the production by 1%, when you raise the production by 1%, the pollution will also raise by 1%. So what they explain, and the way they said it, that was a scientific study, they say that production is pollution when it's regarding plastic. So the study was conducted on 5 years. They kind of gathered plastic from a bit of everywhere in the world, and they looked at that plastic to see where it was coming from, because they wanted to see which brands were responsible for plastic pollution. So what they find out is about 50% of the plastic was non-traceable. So, nothing was written on anything. They couldn't find a brand. But for the rest of the plastic that was collected, 60 multinational brands are responsible for 50% of that amount of plastic. And 6 multinational brands are responsible for a quarter of it. So what they're saying is, we can say that there are brands and multinationals that are the source of a lot of plastic, and that plastic is getting pollution. And now plastic can be found everywhere. They've found some obviously like nanoparticles of plastics in clouds, so deep into the sea, even in human milk breast and human blood. So pollution is getting a bit out of hand and everywhere lately.
Right. Celio, as you mentioned, this fifth session of the UN Plastics Treaty talks looks to be the final platform for a tangible pact on fighting plastic pollution, which is very severe, as Chloe mentioned earlier. That being said, what are the main points of contention as we speak, and what are your prospects of a treaty this time around?
Indeed, as delegates from 175 countries are gathered here in Busan, just a couple of doors away from me, to figure out an international treaty to curb plastic pollution, lingering division casts doubts on whether a final agreement is possible. The first draft of the treaty first mentioned a need to increase recycling effort to better manage plastic waste. According to statistics, only 9% of the plastic in the world is currently recycled, so we can clearly do a better job at this. This point is not so controversial. All the countries present here agree on that statement that there is a need to improve our recycling capabilities. However, that's just a part of the problem. The second part of the treaty tackles with the issue of plastic production that needs to be reduced if we want to reduce plastic pollution. As it was said by an expert during the conference, recycling is good, but if there's a hole in your boat, just scooping the water out is not enough. You need to fix the hole from where the water comes from. Our plastic capabilities cannot deal with the infinite amount of plastic produced. On top of that, plastic is made of oil and already emits greenhouse gases when it's made. As you can imagine, a reduction of plastic production is a threat to the economic interest of oil extracting countries, but also producing countries. In the conference, there are really two blocks facing each other: the anti-plastic, led by the European Union, Norway in the lead, that push for a comprehensive plastic reduction treaty, and the not so against plastic, like Saudi Arabia, India, China, that think it would be better for them to only focus on recycling and not limiting their production. So the division can clearly and will certainly be the main obstacle to an agreement by the end of the week.
Right, and amid the background of such division, Chloe, there are some pundits who believe that the incoming Trump administration in the US will be, and I quote, toxic for environmental policy and will doom efforts to end plastic pollution. What exactly do you suppose do they mean, and what are your thoughts?
So it's interesting to see that currently, since August actually, the United States' current position on plastic pollution, they say that they will back plastic production caps in the treaty. So that's what Celio was calling the coalition against plastic. So they are the high ambition coalition. So this is a very important stance from the US because they are one of the largest plastic consumers. And honestly, even in August under the Joe Biden administration, people were already a bit surprised by that stance from the US. So now the fact that Donald Trump was elected is casting a certain uncertainty on would the US still conduct that line? Will they even reach an agreement? Will they sign the agreement or not? Because we've seen it with the previous term, the previous mandate from Donald Trump. He pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement. It just went out of it. And he has kind of a hatred towards any binding international agreements. So the fact that the US are now taking a very strong stance against plastic pollution, would that be followed under the next mandate? That's not sure. Also because Donald Trump has shown in the past and even in the recent discourse that is also very pro-US oil and US petrochemical production. So, if you cap the production, they are also going to have to reduce the amount of oil and petrochemical products that can be used. So there is a strong risk. And then the other big risk will be if Donald Trump and the US now go in the side of the not so against plastic coalition, they might go in an alliance with other countries that are producing oil and that are currently mostly trying to downsize the treaty, actually, and that would make that group way stronger because with the weight of the US, and they could be more obstructive on any treaty regarding plastic pollution in the future.
Right. Well, then, despite the debate among countries, Celio, over ways to tackle plastic pollution, it appears the public itself, though, does want a plan to dramatically reduce plastic waste. What more can you tell us?
Indeed, it's a worldwide phenomenon. In Korea, hundreds of environmental campaigners marched Saturday in Busan to demand a stronger global commitment to fight plastic waste. About 1,000 people, including a member indigenous group, young people, and NGO were present at the event. In a country that, like Korea, that is reliant on plastic, as the President Yoon Suk-yeol said just yesterday, it makes sense that people demand to reduce plastic waste. For example, Korea produces an average of 12 million tons of plastic waste per year, mostly single-use plastic like disposable cups or wrapping. That's more than a double of what a country like France will produce in a year with a similar population. And there is no official statistics on the amount of plastic that Korea is recycling. Most of that plastic end up somewhere, either in the ground, burnt, or floating on the water. Also, it's quite concerning for the people, and you can really see in the later years, is microplastics. The more we know about it, the more concerning it gets. Still on Korea, it says in a recent study that the average Korean has 2 or 3 times more microplastic in the body than an average American citizen. That is quite concerning because microplastic have lasting effects on human health. This other study showed that on top of accelerating the emergence of cancer, microplastic can reduce fertility for both men and women. So overall, plastic is not only an issue of environment, it's also a health issue. And that's why we can clearly understand why this topic is important for people.
Right, indeed, Celio. I mean, Chloe was just saying that microplastics are now were even found in human breast milk as well. Meanwhile, Chloe, while delegates in Busan seek to fight plastic waste, others in Incheon city are promoting wind energy amid concerns over climate change. Could you tell us a bit about the Apec Wind Energy Summit, including, of course, its agenda this year?
Yeah, sure. So this summit is taking place from today to Thursday in Incheon. The theme this year is leading the global race to 3-time renewables with action in the region. So what is 3-time renewables, first of all? So it's a goal that was decided in the COP28. There were more than 120 countries that committed to triple their renewable energy capabilities by 2030. So this summit, what they want to do, they have 2 goals. First of all, will be to accelerate the development of wind energy in the Asia-Pacific region. So that would be either onshore wind turbines or also offshore wind turbines. And they also want to help the country reach this goal of 3-time renewables. So there is a study that was just shown today at the summit, and they explain that for now, in the Asia-Pacific region, if we exclude China, all the other countries are not going to be able to reach this goal of 3-time the renewable energy amount. So they say that through this summit, they want to take action and they want to find ways to develop the wind energy industries. They are giving a few ideas of how they could do that. Main thing will be political commitments from the different countries that are part of the Asia-Pacific regions, and also cooperation on the local supply chain so that they can be less dependent on other countries and they can find a way to produce those wind turbines here in Korea or in the Asia-Pacific regions.
Right, and speaking about such development, Celio, what are the prospects of wind energy development here in South Korea as perhaps compared to its global partners, including, of course, France?
As Korea is trying to be greener in terms of energy sources, windmill farms are considered an option. After all, the country has a long coastline, multiple mountains. It seems fitted for that kind of project. Developing an offshore wind power industry in Korea will boost renewable energy use, help meet global carbon neutrality goals, and also provide economic benefits such as job creation for building all these farms. Interviewed by the Korea Times, Steven Uttermolen, CEO of RWE Offshore Wind, a German company, highlighted Korea's favorable condition for offshore wind power. citing its geographic advantage and advanced manufacturing industry. However, he emphasized that a political vision backed by clear and consistent regulatory frameworks that enables renewable energy deployment is crucial to drive market growth in that sector in Korea. Also, there is a money incentive to go green. The European Union, a major trading partner with Korea, is increasing its demand for goods and services to be produced from renewable energy sources. The EU is putting a fair price on the carbon emitted during the production of goods. So countries like sectors like semiconductor, automotive, electronics, data centers, steelmaking, shipbuilding, and all the heavy industries are rely on carbon emission quite a lot. And it would be interesting to power them through these plants with renewable energy. So if you want to export the products to the EU, it will be less taxed. So if there is a strong legal framework and therefore also a strong political will to do it in Korea, it could be a good place for windmills. Even though it's not the most windy country on earth, it still remains better than average, and it would be a miss to not grasp on this opportunity.
You're right. It would, of course, be a viable, sustainable energy solution for South Korea as well. Chloe, you talked about the COP28 earlier on, that the COP29 took place in Azerbaijan this month with the international community coming together to address climate change. I understand a deal was sealed at the COP29 this time, but deep divisions persist. Could you tell us a bit more?
Yeah, sure. So the COP29 ended last Friday, and it was seen as a bit underwhelming. Like, people were not really happy with what happened. So what's interesting to see is the deal that was struck is a climate finance fund. It's going from $100 billion a year that was given to developing countries, from developed countries. And now it's going to be $300 billion per year. So this is quite a big advancement, like a big upgrade. It was one of the main goals of this COP29. It was build the finance COP, because that's one of the main goals that was to be achieved, was to get the developed countries, the one who are putting money in this fund, to give more money now. So the thing is, it was the first time in 15 years that the fund was reassessed. The problem is that the deal was considered not enough now by the developing countries, because they even called it a paltry sum. So that's the India's delegate, Shanti Reina, that said that. Why are those countries not that happy with what can be seen as a triple, like we tripled the amount, so that's quite good. But the truth is, because of climate change, the crisis and the effects of climate change are way stronger. And it has been said that before the COP29, there was a new estimate that said, if you want to be able to help the developing countries face the effects of climate change and help them, better themselves in the renewable field, etc., it was expected to be $500 billion to $1 trillion per year. So when you see this estimate and you realize that we are not getting to that point. So that's why there is so much division, because developed countries feel that they are helping more. Developing countries are saying that it's still not enough, because the effects of climate change are going to get stronger and stronger with time. Also, it's interesting to know that it's in developing countries that the changes have to be made. They're responsible for 75% of the growth in emission of gas, like greenhouse gas, in the past decade. So we need to help them be able to be more green in order for everyone to get better and to try to stay under this 2 degrees, like 1.5 degrees, heat up in the future.
Right. Celio, what were some of your takeaways from the COP29 in Azerbaijan this month?
Well, I agree with most of what Chloe said. It is disappointing, and it doesn't give good hopes for the negotiation in Busan this week. The COP29 agreement was reached with quite a lot of difficulty, and the result not up to the challenges. That was the general takeaway of the summit for pundits. Even though a funding of $300 billion was agreed upon to help developing countries to be sustainable, the funding promise for 2035 is too low, too late, and too ambiguous. immediately regretted the representative from Kenya, also his counterpart from Malawi, another developing country in Africa, representing the 45th poorest country on the planet. For his part, he denounced an ambitious agreement. The amount proposed is lamentably low, and it is derisory. So also this financial commitment from European countries, the US, Canada, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, is to increase from 100 billion today to at least 300 billion annually. And this country will provide loans to the developing countries, money to adapt to floods, heat waves, droughts, but also invest in low carbon energies instead of developing their economies by burning coal, as Western countries have done for more than a century now. And Western countries, as I mentioned before, were demanding that the list of states responsible for climate finance should be expanded to also include large economies of today, like China, Singapore, and the Gulf countries, which all have become richer since the list was established in 1992. But China has drawn a red line. There's no question of touching this list. They don't want to be included in the financing countries. So in result, the Baku agreement only invites the other countries to provide financial contribution, but this will remain voluntary, and it doesn't seem to be a really big win for this. Any explicit mention of the transition toward the exit from fossil fuel also, which was a main achievement of the last COP, COP28 in Dubai, also disappeared in the finalization of the main text. Overall, it's a painful experience, and yeah, it doesn't give good hopes for today in Busan.
Right, unfortunately it doesn't, Celio. Chloe, according to a monthly British magazine, Korea ranks among the top 5 in terms of a public that is very much concerned about the consequences of global warming. Do you suppose this particular finding is an indication of how receptible the Korean public would be to tougher government policies on protecting the climate?
Yeah, so this is interesting to see that 94% of the South Koreans say that they think that climate change will pose a threat to South Korea in the next 20 years. So that, as you said, show that the public, like vast majority actually of South Koreans, are aware that climate change will have consequences for them in their daily lives. This is already first a good thing to know that people do realize it already. And yet the South Korean policies on the effect of climate change are for now considered as highly insufficient by the Climate Action Agency, so that's an independent scientific committee. So that's interesting to see that there is room for improvement in the policies that are decided. Could there be more ambitious environmental policies? There is obviously the possibility for that, but there is a cost. For example, 40% of the greenhouse emissions in South Korea are made by the steel industry. So Celio was speaking about that just before. But I mean, steel industry is one of the powerhouse of the industry in the nation. So what should we do? Do we have to, reduce the economical growth in order to get more ecological? This is a hard thing. There is another thing is also the cost. Under the previous administration, the Moon administration, they wanted to go for 100% renewable energies. That's something that has been stopped under this administration because President Yoon Suk-yeol said that it was too expensive to develop only renewable energies, and he chose to go more toward the nuclear mix. And it's true that there is this question: who should pay for this renewable mix? Who should pay for all this kind of new greener policies? So this is questions that have to be seen, and as you say, the question is the public ready to get a bigger cost on them in order to try to save the country from the climate change effects? It's interesting to see that there is some individual action that are already taking place, like coffees that are giving a discount if you're bringing your own cup, so that you don't take a cup like to take away, places where you got paper straws and things like this. This is not going to change things because it's on a too small scale, but it's interesting to see that it might help people realize that there is action to be taken even in everyday life, and that then there is bigger policies, like more ambitious policies that have also to be taken.
Right, for sure in the near future, more tangible policies to better address pollution as well as our concerns over climate change. All right, Chloe, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today. And Celio over in Busan, thank you very much for your insights today. Right, well, that is all the time we have for today. Thank you for watching. Do join us again same time tomorrow.